After a long ride from the forest, I can see Fort Edmonton in the distance. It is time to pick up supplies and trade in our furs. Many people are gathered to trade with the Hudson Bay Company, including some First Nation people. I've never looked inside a teepee. I've always wondered how they stay warm during those cold Rupert's Land winters. Such a warm fire smoldering. I can smell some bannock cooking. It is very fascinating to watch these women bead their moccasins. Maybe they will trade with me later. I see the York boats have arrived on the river. They can carry more furs in their boats than I can on my wagon. It's almost time for me to go into the store. The Hudson Bay Company man has just finished evaluating my furs.
The trade store here is really the whole reason for the fort. We're all out here for trade, and it's the natives that are coming in here, bringing all the furs in and trading them here. We'll take any kinds of furs. In exchange for those furs, we'll give out really anything you see here in the store. Any of the buildings throughout the fort here, whether living areas or working areas, for the managers or the tradesmen, it's all to support the trade that goes on here. And the Hudson's Bay Company is making all its money from the furs. And the fur we want the most is a beaver skin. The reason we want beaver, it becomes our currency. It's the most sought after fur because it makes fancy hats like this. And in Britain and Europe, it's years' wages of somebody, or I'm sorry, it would be years' wages of somebody working here in the fort. But in Britain and Europe, it's an incredibly fancy status symbol, a high fashion to have something like this. Like buying a new luxury car today. And the Hudson's Bay Company is making so much money, most of its profits coming from the beaver that they're getting and selling it, and they're being made into hats and supporting most of the industry here, although again we do take any sorts of fur and we'll, in exchange for those trade. Whatever you like, blankets, metal goods like pots, axe heads, knives, maybe things like beads, maybe some tobacco, tea, muskets, anything here, it's all available.
Liquor?
For trade. Liquor, good question. By this time, the Hudson's Bay Company has a monopoly. They own basically what's most of Central and Western Canada. Yeah. And since they don't have to worry about any sort of competition or anything like that, after 1821, they restrict any trade of liquor. You might get small amounts as gifts when tribes come to trade for a couple days, and before trade is done, usually there's a celebration, gift exchanges, parties, things like that, and you might get gifts of rum then. The men get a ration on special celebrations, but they won't be trading any because it's basically because it's bad for business, and they won't get the same volume of furs in here. Similarly, they won't allow any settlement out here, and they'll enforce their trade monopoly as much as they can as well too, so that the only Europeans out here are employed by the company living inside these forts, which are really just trading posts. And the natives doing what they're doing and bringing as many furs to us as possible.
I've been invited to stay for a get-together in the manager's residence. It's later tonight, though. In the meantime, it gives me an opportunity to explore more of the fort. I think it's time for me to go visit my friend in the marriage quarters.
These are the married men's quarters. So this cabin would have accommodated the tradesmen or the voyageurs that were taking wives. This cabin accommodated 3 such families, and each family was having between 5 to 7 children. So you can expect that there would have been about 21 people in this cabin. So it would have been quite cozy. The couple that had been married the longest would have the good fortune of having this luxury bed, and the couple that was most recently buried would have this top bunk. The infants would have slept in a cradle or from the hammock from the rafters, and the older children, like yourself, would have gone up the stairs in the evening to the loft, which was open all the way across. So most of the men in the fort were French or Scottish, and despite the fact that they had families in their home countries, many of them were taking wives here, and this became known as country wives. The women would have been primarily from the Cree tribe, or the Cree nation, and the offspring then became the Métis culture as we have it in Alberta today.
I have a couple friends who are staying in the single man quarters. Maybe I can find them. Unbelievable! I did not realize how crammed these quarters were.
Oh, we know where that door leads to.
I do hope I will be allowed to attend church services this week. This is such a nice chapel they have here in Fort Edmonton. Finally, it is time to visit the manager's residence.
So this whole structure is the private residence to John Rowand, who's the chief factor here, which is like a district manager. So he's hired by the Hudson's Bay Company to oversee the whole area, and there's about 7 fur trading forts in that area that he would be in charge of. So he decides to build the house all with his own money. Puts very extravagant things in it, like the glass windows, the paneling on the inside, and it's just for him and his wife and 3 of their daughters. So it's a very big house for such a small family. And the room that we're in right now is the Great Hall, which is very much a reception room. So Christmas and New Year's parties would happen in here, and pre-trade ceremonies. So native tribes coming to trade, their chiefs would come in the night before and have a gift exchange with John Rowand. That's what this room would be used for. Otherwise, just if it's not being used for any particular reason, it would more than likely be closed off and used for storage. Yeah.
This is a really nice residence. It reminds me of my home back in Scotland. Everyone is hard to work at the fort. I wonder if there's time to play. Now that looks like a fun game. It is time for me to head back to the forest. To get more furs, make more money. Maybe this time I'll make my fortune and be able to return home.